There are moments in spiritual history, rare, luminous moments, when a single gesture, a single sentence, fractures the ordinary world and pours light into the cracks. Today, we open the gates to one such moment, a moment whispered about in esoteric circles, hinted at in apocryphal texts, and guarded like a flame in the night. It is the moment when Jesus, teacher, mystic, and revealer of inner worlds, made Thomas 3 times greater than the other disciples. But what does that even mean? How could a simple fisherman, often overshadowed by Peter's fire or John's devotion, rise to a level that even seasoned spiritual initiates barely comprehend? The answer lies not in the conventional stories told in Sunday sermons, but in the hidden teachings, the mystical passages from the Gospel of Thomas, the sayings tradition, and the enigmatic lore carried quietly through early Gnostic communities. As we begin this journey, I want you to imagine a scene, a dimly lit room, not long after a profound teaching has been given. The disciples are restless, uneasy, trying to grasp the magnitude of what they've just heard. And there, sitting still, eyes steady as the surface of a silent lake, is Thomas. Jesus turns to him and with a knowing smile speaks words the others cannot yet understand. A transmission happens, not merely a lesson, but a seed of revelation, one that will grow in Thomas and reshape everything he touches. This video will uncover why Jesus chose Thomas, what the threefold greatness truly signifies, and the deeper initiatory wisdom embedded in this mysterious moment. We will explore lost contexts, symbolic meanings, and hidden teachings long overshadowed by mainstream narratives. But more importantly, we will uncover what this ancient act means for you, right now, in your life, in your search for inner clarity and spiritual mastery. Because this is not just a story about Thomas, it is a mirror, reflecting what the awakened mind can become. To understand the moment Jesus elevated Thomas to a threefold greatness, we must cross the threshold of conventional history and step into the twilight zone, where scripture, symbolism, and suppressed traditions intertwine. Because this event, if taken only at the surface level, seems impossible. Yet when viewed through the lens of early mystical Christianity, it becomes not only plausible, but inevitable. Let's begin with a world often forgotten, the 1st and 2nd centuries, when Christianity was not a unified doctrine, but a living, dynamic spiritual movement. It wasn't yet shaped by councils or creeds. Instead, it flowed through desert hermitages, small communities, and hidden gatherings where seekers explored layers of Jesus's teachings that were more interior than institutional, more experiential than dogmatic. Within this landscape, several streams of thought existed, one of them being the mystical or Gnostic tradition. Contrary to the villainous reputation later assigned to them, these early mystics were not heretics but explorers. They believed Jesus was not merely giving ethical instructions. He was offering a roadmap to inner awakening, to direct knowledge of the divine spark within. And at the heart of these traditions was a pivotal text, the Gospel of Thomas. This enigmatic collection of 114 sayings has no narrative, no miracles, no crucifixion story. Instead, it presents Jesus as a wisdom teacher, unlocking layers of consciousness. It emphasizes introspection, inner clarity, and direct experience of truth. And its most consistent theme is this: the kingdom is not external. It is discovered within. This teaching is the backdrop to Thomas's transformation. While other disciples represented faith, devotion, or action, Thomas represented understanding, not intellectual understanding, but the deep intuitive comprehension that integrates the outer and inner worlds. In many early communities, Thomas was known not as the doubter, but as Didymos, the twin, a symbolic title, a reminder that he reflects the twin nature within every seeker, the part that questions and the part that knows. But why would such teachings become hidden or marginalized? Because they emphasize personal awakening over institutional authority. They encourage direct experience over blind belief, and they place the locus of power not in external structures, but in the awakened human being. As Christianity formalized over centuries, teachings that empowered the individual often fell into silence. Thomas's role, his elevated status, and the inner teachings associated with him gradually faded from mainstream interpretation. Yet the traces remained, in fragments, in whispers, in texts buried under desert sands for nearly 2,000 years, until the Nag Hammadi discoveries. To grasp the full weight of what Jesus did for Thomas, we must understand this context. Jesus was not choosing a favorite. He was recognizing a capacity, a readiness, and he was planting a teaching that could not yet be received by the masses. The threefold greatness Jesus granted Thomas was not a title. It was a transmission, a state of consciousness, and a responsibility. And now, we step closer. In the next section, we explore what this threefold greatness actually was, and why it set Thomas apart in ways the other disciples could not yet fathom. To understand the threefold greatness bestowed upon Thomas, we must return to that rare moment, subtle, nearly invisible to an untrained eye, when Jesus recognized in him a depth that had not yet awakened in the other disciples. This was not favoritism. It was recognition. It was the honoring of an inner capacity that had ripened in silence, nurtured not by public displays of faith, but by quiet, deliberate inquiry. The story begins with a question, one Thomas dared to ask that others did not. In several early traditions, Thomas is the disciple who consistently challenges surface meanings. When Jesus speaks of the inner kingdom, Thomas does not simply nod. He probes. He asks for clarity, not out of disbelief, but out of a hunger for the real, the essential, the undiluted truth. In mystical traditions, this is known as the first gate of wisdom, the power to question without rejecting and to receive without blindly accepting. Most people live on one side or the other, skeptical of everything or willing to believe anything. Thomas stands in the middle path. He questions to understand, not to defy. And this is the beginning of his greatness. When Jesus elevated Thomas, he was recognizing that Thomas had crossed the threshold of this first gate. But there were two more. The second gate appears in the apocryphal stories where Jesus pulls Thomas aside, away from the others, and says, "I am not your master. You have drunk, and you have become intoxicated from the bubbling spring I have tended." The language is symbolic. To drink from the spring means to internalize the teaching, to not merely understand it intellectually, but to embody it. In mystical circles, this second gate is called the power of inner seeing. The moment when the mind no longer relies solely on external teachings, but begins to perceive truth from within. This is the point where Thomas becomes 3 times greater, in potential, not in rank. Jesus sees in him the capacity to realize the kingdom inwardly, to move beyond parables and metaphors into direct experience. While many disciples heard the teachings, Thomas absorbed them. Yet the third gate, the most profound, is rarely discussed and almost always misunderstood. This gate is integration. The ability to exist as both student and master, seeker and knower, twin and singular one. It is the paradox Jesus references when he calls Thomas his twin. Not biologically, of course, but spiritually. In Thomas, Jesus sees a mirror, not of his divinity, but of his consciousness. Thomas had begun to awaken the same interior clarity that Jesus embodied. This is why certain texts portray Thomas as the one trusted with secret sayings, private transmissions, and revelations that required a mature, stabilized awareness. The others were still developing foundational understanding. Thomas was ready to step into inner mastery. Now, what exactly does 3 times greater mean? In early mystical symbolism, the number 3 represents completion. Not perfection, but wholeness. It signifies the unification of 3 realms. 1. The outer world, the realm of action and perception. 2. The inner mind, the realm of thought, contemplation, and insight. 3. The hidden heart, the realm of direct knowing, intuition, and divine communion. When Jesus made Thomas threefold, he was recognizing that Thomas could operate across all 3 levels simultaneously. Most seekers master 1, sometimes 2. Thomas had the potential for all 3, and this made him a vessel for deeper teachings. But this recognition came with challenges. The other disciples, rooted in a more literal understanding, often clashed with Thomas's introspective nature. They mistook his questions for doubt, his clarity for conflict, and his independence for stubbornness. This tension appears in several early texts, suggesting that Thomas walked a lonely path, a path of inner initiation rather than external authority. And this is where the mystery deepens. Because if the threefold greatness of Thomas is not about hierarchy, but about consciousness, then what exactly did Jesus pass on to him? What was the nature of this hidden transmission? And why did Jesus choose Thomas for it, rather than Peter, John, or James? In the next section, we will unravel these deeper layers, the paradoxes, the secret meanings, and the esoteric significance behind Thomas's unique role. Because the story is far from over. In many ways, it's only just beginning. To understand the full magnitude of what Jesus imparted to Thomas, we must look beyond titles, beyond symbolic numbers, and even beyond the text itself. What happened between them was not an intellectual lesson. It was an energetic transmission, a passing of a living current, meant for a disciple capable of holding it without distortion. This transmission appears subtly in the Book of Thomas the Contender, where Jesus tells Thomas, "Because you are my twin and my true companion, examine yourself and understand who you are, that you may know yourself." This is not casual advice. These are the instructions of an initiator to a successor, guidance for someone ready to walk the razor's edge of inner revelation. At its core, Thomas's threefold greatness relates to 3 layers of knowledge Jesus entrusted to him, each of which transcends the traditional narratives known to the outer world. The first layer is the knowledge of the visible world, the realm of behavior, ethics, and the practical teachings Jesus offered publicly. This was the domain of parables, social wisdom, and compassionate action. All disciples received this, but Thomas grasped it with a depth that pierced beyond moral instruction. He recognized the symbolic architecture within each story, a mental blueprint for aligning one's life with the deeper structure of reality. The second layer is the knowledge of the invisible world, insights into the inner realms, the nature of the soul, the illusions of the mind, and the hidden mechanisms of consciousness. While others heard metaphors, Thomas heard maps. Where others saw miracles, Thomas saw principles. It is said in certain traditions that Thomas alone asked Jesus to explain how mind gives rise to the world, a question that hints at profound philosophical courage. And the third layer, the crown of Thomas's greatness, is the knowledge of the unspoken, the direct, wordless knowing of truth that cannot be taught through language. This is the sphere of pure gnosis. It has no scriptures because it precedes scripture. It has no doctrine because it transcends doctrine. This is where Jesus and Thomas met as twins, in shared awareness, not shared flesh. But as Thomas rose into this state, paradoxes followed him like shadows. One paradox lies in the famous label, Doubting Thomas. At first glance, this title diminishes him, reducing a profound spiritual seeker to a skeptic. But from an esoteric standpoint, doubt is not the enemy of truth. It is the guardian of truth. True doubt strips away illusion, tests claims, purifies belief, and demands authenticity. Thomas did not doubt out of fear. He doubted out of integrity. Another paradox is that while Thomas received more inner teachings, he also carried more responsibility. Hidden knowledge is not a privilege. It is a burden, an initiation into solitude. As such, various traditions describe Thomas as wandering far from the others, even reaching India, carrying a message that could not be fully comprehended by those still rooted in the outer layers of faith. His gospel, unlike others, contains no narrative, only pure crystalline fragments of inner revelation. Then there is the paradox of secrecy. Why didn't Jesus share these teachings with all the disciples? The answer lies not in favoritism, but in timing. Every spiritual master knows that deeper truths cannot be poured into vessels still forming their foundations. The others were still absorbing the outer teachings. Thomas, however, was ready to step beyond them. And so the threefold greatness was not superiority. It was readiness. It was capacity. It was alignment. Yet even this understanding leaves a mystery. What was the ultimate purpose of giving Thomas this three-layered wisdom? Was he meant to lead, to preserve, to seed a hidden lineage? Or was the transmission meant not for him alone, but for all future seekers capable of awakening the same threefold clarity within themselves? In the next section, we will explore how this ancient moment can transform your own life, how the threefold path Thomas embodied can become a living practice, a framework for your own inner evolution. Because the secret Jesus gave Thomas is not confined to history. It is waiting to be realized in you. The power of the Thomas story is not in its history, it's in its usefulness. Ancient wisdom is never meant to sit sealed in dusty manuscripts. It is a living architecture, waiting to be activated in the seeker who dares to step into deeper self-awareness. The threefold greatness Jesus recognized in Thomas is not an exclusive gift. It is a blueprint for inner mastery, available to anyone who understands how to cultivate it. Let's explore how you can bring these three layers, outer clarity, inner seeing, and silent knowing, into your own spiritual practice. 1. Cultivating the first gate, the outer clarity. This begins with a deceptively simple practice. Ask questions, real, honest, uncomfortable questions, not to dismantle truth, but to reveal it. Set aside 10 minutes each day to journal the following. What do I truly believe, and why? Which beliefs are inherited and which are discovered? Where do I accept things too easily? Where do I reject too quickly? This is the Thomas mindset. Questioning as a sharpening tool, not a weapon. When you question from sincerity rather than cynicism, the mind becomes a sword, precise, discerning, and free from illusion. 2. Cultivating the second gate, the inner seeing. Once questioning clears the fog, you can begin discovering the inner landscape Thomas mastered. This is the realm of insight, intuition, and the silent workings of consciousness. Try this practice for 7 days. Sit in silence for 5 minutes. Bring attention to a single thought. Instead of analyzing it, watch it dissolve. This trains the mind to observe rather than react, to perceive rather than cling. Over time, you'll notice a subtle shift. Thoughts lose their authority. They become signals instead of commands. This is the beginning of inner seeing, the same capacity Jesus recognized in Thomas when he said that Thomas had drunk deeply from the living spring of truth. 3. Cultivating the third gate, the silent knowing. This is the most elusive and the most transformative. Silent knowing is not intuition, not emotion, not belief. It is the state where clarity arises without effort, without argument, without conflict. Thomas accessed this through introspection. You can begin with a practice known in mystical traditions as the inward turn. Place your attention on the feeling of I am, not your name, not your story, not your roles. Simply rest in the awareness of being. No descriptions, no interpretations, just being. If done consistently, a strange thing happens. You begin to sense a deeper version of yourself, one that is calm, spacious, and untouched by external chaos. This is the doorway to the third layer Jesus entrusted to Thomas. Not a teaching, but a state. 4. Integrating the threefold path. The real magic arrives when you combine these practices. You question to clear the mind. You observe to open the inner eye. You rest in awareness to anchor the deeper knowing. When all three are harmonized, consciousness shifts. You begin to understand the world differently. You respond to challenges with clarity rather than confusion. You feel grounded, centered, unshaken. This is the modern equivalent of the threefold greatness, an alignment of outer, inner, and transcendent awareness. 5. Overcoming the common obstacles. On this path, expect resistance. The mind will distract. Old beliefs will cling. Emotions will flare. When this happens, remember Thomas's greatest strength, persistence without desperation. Return to the practices gently and consistently. Ask, observe, rest. These 3 steps, repeated over time, awaken the same clarity Jesus saw in his twin. And now, with these tools, you stand at the threshold Thomas once crossed. A threshold that leads to deeper perception, inner mastery, and a silent knowing that needs no validation. In the conclusion, we'll bring these threads together and explore what this means for your spiritual journey moving forward. When we step back and take in the full landscape of the Thomas story, the hidden teachings, the symbolic transmissions, the threefold path, we begin to see why this moment has echoed quietly through the centuries. It is not just a relic of early Christian mysticism. It is a living reminder that the highest spiritual breakthroughs do not come from blind belief or rigid obedience. They come from inner clarity, fearless inquiry, and direct experience of truth. Thomas was not elevated because he was better than the others. He was elevated because he was ready. Ready to question, ready to see, ready to know. And this is the quiet message beneath the story. Readiness is the real difference. Readiness opens doors no external authority can close. Readiness turns teachings into transformation. The threefold greatness Jesus recognized in Thomas was ultimately a mirror held up to humanity. It shows us what becomes possible when we align the outer mind, the inner vision, and the silent heart. When we do, something extraordinary happens. Spirituality stops being a concept and becomes a lived reality. Wisdom stops being something we chase and becomes something we are. And so, as you reflect on Thomas's journey, consider your own. Where are you on the threefold path? Which gates have you crossed? And which ones are calling you next? Let these questions linger. Let them stir something within you. Because you are not just a viewer of ancient spiritual history. You are a participant in an unfolding story that continues through your own awakening. If this exploration has opened something in you, even subtly, then the hidden teaching of Thomas has already begun its work. Feel free to share your insights, your questions, or your breakthroughs in the comments. This channel thrives on seekers like you, those willing to go deeper, to peel back the layers, to rediscover truths long overshadowed by time. And if you're ready to continue exploring the forgotten dimensions of ancient wisdom, consider subscribing. There are many more secrets waiting to be uncovered. Until then, walk your path with clarity, courage, and quiet knowing. The same knowing that once made Thomas threefold, and now calls to awaken within you.